Your brother is the wise one. You are supposed to help, not lead. My dad's words pierced through the exquisite meeting room like a knife through the room. Every syllable, made to help me remember where I fit in, the order of the family. I was shocked as he went on with his announcement to the board that was there. Family and members. Nathan will be in charge of Brit Holdings and getting the $50 million trust as an inheritance. The fund that my mum set up. I'm 32 years old, and my name is Juliette Whitmore. Years old. As long as I can remember. I've lived in my younger. In the shadow of his brother. Nathan got praise for every. I was expected to do well, even if I didn't. Smile, be there for them, and be quiet. But this moment felt different. This wasn't simply another family meal with Dad. Gave a lot of care to his golden child. This was the whole future I was getting. Gone. The chamber with mahogany panels became quiet. Save for the faint scraping of the pen of the court reporter. Nathan sat, a proud smirk on his face as he sat up straighter in his chair, spreading across his face as he agreed. The board members sent their best wishes. He had always been Dad's favorite at 29. Favorite, the heir apparent who could do. Richard Whitmore saw nothing wrong. I saw him shaking hands with our dad. Both of them were really happy. Juliette will keep doing what she's doing. Supportive role, Dad said barely. She's always looking in my direction. Been good at the details, the work that isn't seen. That's where she is. Belong. I made myself clap nicely, the sound empty in my ears. Around them, at the table, board members nodded in agreement, as if this was the only thing that could happen. Some people completely avoided looking at me while some people smiled in a way that showed they understood. Only made the embarrassment worse. But something moved in the back of the room, a movement that made me look. Caught my eye for a second before I brought my attention back to the family festivity happening in front of me. Nathan was already talking about his plan for the company, his voice full of the confidence that came from never having to show that he is worth it. I aim to grow our operation a lot, he said, gesturing a lot. We need to think, take more risks and get bigger. I bit my tongue, remembering all the times taking risks almost cost us a lot of money. But now that I've said that, would just back up what Dad said about myself as a supporter who pays attention to details rather than a leader with a vision. So I sat there with my hands on my lap, seeing my brother taken, an inheritance that should have been earned, instead of just being delivered. The scary, my chest informed me this moment, would set the stage for everything that came after. I had no idea how much the afternoon was about to change. Being raised in the Whitmore home meant learning early on that opinions were not valued the same. Dad, Richard Whitmore, had put together Bright Fern Holdings, from a modest consultancy company to a regional powerhouse, and he was in charge of both. The same thing for the company and our family. My mother, Patricia, had an iron fist. Died when I was 15, leaving my dad to bring Nathan and me up according to his strict ideas about gender roles and hierarchy in the family. Nathan has the instincts that come naturally to him. Business. Dad would tell anybody who he thinks like an. Juliette is an entrepreneur who is methodical, cautious, great for supporting roles. I had graduated, but it didn't matter. Summa cum laude from business school while Nathan narrowly passed with a C. Average. It didn't matter that I had worked my way up for the previous 8 years, through all of our company's departments, learning the business from the ground up. What mattered was that Nathan was the son, the chosen one, and I was just the daughter who just so happened to be good with spreadsheets. The irony wasn't lost on me. Nathan went to networking events and played golf with people who might be able to help him. Events and played golf with people who might. Clientele. I was the one who really kept the business going. I looked over every important contract and caught the mistakes in the bookkeeping that may have cost us millions and quietly rectified the. Nathan's visionary thinking caused complications. Made by thinking. When the Henderson Group almost pulled out their account since Nathan had promised time frames that were unrealistic, I was the one who worked 3 weekends to save the connection. When he aggressively expanded into the Phoenix market, started losing money fast. Money, I came up with the restructuring plan that made it lucrative. But Dad never witnessed any of that. He saw Nathan's, his charm and ability to take charge of a place, his readiness to make big choices, without becoming stuck in details that aren't needed. What Dad didn't see was that Those subtleties were typically what made the difference between success and disaster. Grandmother Ella Lehner had been different. Even before she died 6. She had posed pointed questions months ago. Wanted to know more about the business. Understand not only the vision, but also the execution. At family dinners she would corner me, inquiring about certain projects, paying close attention as I discussed the problems we were having. She seemed truly different from her dad, interested in what I had to say. You have your grandmother's mind for business, she had told me during our last time we talked. She built the base that your father built upon. Don't ever forget that, Juliet. I pondered about those remarks just now. Nathan kept talking about his intentions for the business. His ideas were daring. Yes, but they didn't have the analysis that had helped Brit Holdings worked. He said that we should double the number of people who work for us. About 2 years, growing into 3 new marketplaces at the same time and putting money into a lot in technology that he obviously didn't get it. The board members were nodding along, but I could tell that worry in some of their eyes. These were sophisticated folks who knew business, and they could hear the same warning bells that were going off in my head. But none of them would stand up to the air clear, especially not in a little bit of noise in front of his father. In the back of the room caught my attention again, but when I glanced, I saw only the faces of people I knew. Her family lawyer and her helper. The shame settled over me like a Nathan felt a familiar weight as he enjoyed his moment of victory. This wasn't the first time I had been pushed to on the sidelines while he took credit and acknowledgement, but it seemed like the most clear-cut. $50 million to run a business that I knew better than everyone else, therefore I gave it to someone whose main business was not entirely successful in their goal, tearing down the departments I had constructed. I want to thank my dad for believing in me, Nathan said. To me, Nathan said, and his voice carried that practiced honesty he had made better throughout the years. And of course my sister Juliet for everything. I know I can count on her to help me make my vision a reality. The words hurt because they cut 8 years of my career to a supporting role in his tale. I had always knew this day would come, although knowing and experiencing were things that are very different. I could see the faces of people around the table, people I had worked with, people who know precisely how much I helped with the company's success, but not one. They wouldn't say anything. Corporate politics were more important than the truth. Juliet has always been the one to pay attention to details. Dad kept talking, and his tone implying that this was some sort of compliment. She'll make sure that everything runs well while Nathan concentrates on the big picture. I wanted to remind him of the Morrison account where I paid attention to detail had found a contract loophole that saved us $3 million, or the changing the layout of our Denver office so that I had made it so that it grew 30% more productive while cutting down, but challenging Dad's overhead. The story would simply back up his point that I wasn't cut out to be a leader. I smiled and nodded instead, pretending the part one had been given since from childhood. I'm happy to help Nathan's vision, I said. The words tasted like ash in my the company means everything to me. Nathan reached over and touched our family, squeezed my shoulder in a way that was likely meant to be a brotherly gesture, but it seemed more like a reminder of his might. That's what I adore about Juliet, he remarked. She's always been good at working with others. A team player like I hadn't been. For years he has been carrying the team. Stole the credit, like my ideas and innovations were essentially a way for teams to work together instead of leadership. The flippant dismissal was nearly worse than Dad's blatant rejection of my skills. Well, I suppose that ends our. Dad said, that's all for business today. Standing up to show that the end of the. Hey Nathan, we should talk about the meeting. Transition timeline. As folks started to get their paperwork together and got ready to go when I saw movement in the back corner again. Our Victoria Collins was the family lawyer. Stood beside the entrance with what appeared like she was holding a formal paper. Her look was solemn, even sad, and she looked like she was waiting for something. The feeling of dread in my gut become worse, but I couldn't understand why. The worst had already. It occurred, didn't it? Just like Dad and Nathan started talking about the move. Victoria Collins made arrangements and then cleared her throat loudly from the back of the room. Excuse me, she said, and her voice carried the power that came from 30 years of the law. Before we finish, there's something Important that needs to be taken care of. The room was quiet. Victoria had been our family's lawyer since before I was born, taking care of everything from business to born, managing everything from corporate. She was in charge of contracts and estate planning. Not someone who broke up meetings. Gently, and the official paper in her hands made it clear that this was no small an issue of administration. Victoria, what is this about? Father inquired, and his tone changed from happy to worried. Can it wait? We're in the middle of. Richard said. I'm sorry, but it can't wait. Victoria cut in, which she had never done before. Never done in all the years I had known her. This has a direct connection to the inheritance. The announcement you just made. Nathan's smile of confidence began to stumble. He asked, what do you mean? More than normal. Everything is okay now. Grandma's. Victoria read the will 6 months ago. Walked to the front of the room, the sound of heels clicking against the shiny floor with careful accuracy. Now all the board members were watching, feeling that something important was going to happen. I could feel my heart rate speeding up, though. I didn't get it. That's right, Nathan. The original will of Grandma was read 6. Victoria mentioned that months ago, put the document on the table for the meeting. But what was read was not her last will. The words hovered in the air like a bomb ready to go off. Dad's face was turned pale. Nathan was looking at Victoria as if she had spoken something foreign language. Around the table, board members exchanged perplexed looks that showed they were just as confused as I was. Dad said slowly, I don't get it. Mother's will was finished years ago. She made it plain what she wanted. Your mother changed her mind about her. Victoria said. Well, 3 weeks before her death, said her voice steady and businesslike. On January 15th, she arrived to my workplace and carried out a caudle that was really modified how inheritance works. I felt like the room was whirling around me. January 15th was 2 days after Eleanor's grandmother had been to the office to look over our quarterly reports. She had spent hours poring through our financial statements and requesting for more information. Inquiries concerning each department's performance. I thought it was just her normal careful way of doing things. Getting to know the business. Nathan claimed it was impossible, his voice a little bit of cracking. She would have told us. She would have said to Dad. Victoria started the document with lack of practice. Eleanor Whitmore was extremely clear in her instructions. She wanted the changed will stay sealed until the day the officially notified the inheritance to the business. She thought it would give the most accurate evaluation of how the family really saw both possible heirs. It hit me like a physical blow. Grandmother had been putting us through our paces. She had been paying attention to how Dad behaved. Nathan and I, seeing what we really do, adding to the business and making her ultimate choice based on what she saw instead of what she had been told. What does the change say? Hey, Dad asked, even though his voice made it sound like he was already afraid of the answer. Victoria stared me straight in the eye for the first time since coming into the room. The amendment names Juliet Whitmore as the main person who will get the $50 million trust fund and gives her a controlling position in Brit Holdings. It was very quiet after that. I could hear my own heartbeat since it was so full. Nathan's face had gone from pale to pale, and Dad was looking at Victoria like she had just said that. The force of gravity had stopped working. At the table, board members were working on your information with great care. Those who knew that it was important to pay attention to everything they thought they knew had just changed. Nathan, there must be a mistake, muttered. But he seemed to know too. That Victoria Collins didn't do. Made blunders with legal papers. I couldn't move from my chair. Truly understand what I had just heard. After 32 years of being told I wasn't not smart enough, not a leader. The material wasn't the proper choice. One person's viewpoint had made this happen. The corporation had picked me, Victoria kept reading from the document, her voice piercing through the shocked quiet. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore's new will says, after close observation of both of my grandchildren's contributions to, I have come to the conclusion that Brightfern Holdings, that Juliet owns the business. Insight, attention to detail, and the ability to plan strategically to lead the future of the business. Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish straining for oxygen. The golden lad, who had never been turned down for anything was hearing for the first time in his life that someone thought he wasn't good enough. On the meantime, Dad had sat down on his chair. Like the weight of this news was. "Keep going," he said, pressing him violently. I heard myself say, reading, my voice, sounding strange to my own ears. Victoria nodded in agreement. Nathan shows excitement and charisma, yet his choices have demonstrated a pattern of mistakes that cost a lot of money that could put the company's future at risk. The Henderson Group contract crisis, the failed plan to expand Phoenix, and the Denver office was almost insolvent, have convinced me under his watch that leading involves more than character and noble intentions. Victoria wrote down a list of things, and each one was a carefully written out failure that I had quietly fixed. Grandma had been paying more attention than any of us understood, and she had been keeping score. The Henderson deal that Nathan had almost lost through unrealistic promises. I had saved it, simply changing the phrases and working 3 weekends in a row. The Phoenix expansion that cost a lot of money for 8 months. I had made the plan for reorganization that made it lucrative. The situation in the Denver office that could have killed us. I had found the problems and put them into action. Nathan was taking credit for solutions while for brave leadership. Victoria went on to say, during my last trip to the offices, I saw that workers always sought Juliet's advice on complicated issues, while Nathan's participation usually needed to be fixed later or to make things clearer. This trend shows that the business's actual leadership of operations already. Juliet is in charge of it, no matter what official titles or what the family expects. I remembered that day in January when Grandma had been to the offices. She came without warning, saying she wanted to know how things truly operated, instead of obtaining a polished presentation. I was surprised by how many workers she talked to, how a lot of questions she had concerning daily operations. Now I knew she had been doing an evaluation. This is crazy. Nathan finally lost it, his tightly kept calmness breaking all the way. I'm the one who has been trained for this position. Dad picked me. You can't change everything just because of some last-minute paperwork. The paper is legally binding. Victoria answered in a calm way. Your grandma had every right to change her will, and she was in her right mind when she did these things. I have the medical records that back her up, mental competence along with video testimony she recorded explaining her reasoning. Finally, Dad found his voice, although it came out as a whisper to a horse. She filmed her testimony. She did. Ella Lehner wanted to make sure there was no doubt about her, what she wanted or why she did it. She spent a lot of time writing down the certain business choices and results that had an effect on her final decision. The room felt like it was leaning on its axis. Every idea we have about our family, every idea about the future, Nathan and Dad's plan was falling apart in real time. I could see it on their faces, the beginning of understanding that Eleanor's grandma had been watching, judging, and finally turning down the story they had built about Nathan's inevitable success. Victoria read, I leave at the end. Juliet has taken over Brighton Holdings because she has already shown the leadership skills needed for the company's ongoing prosperity. She has been in charge without the title. She will now have both the power and the duty that what she has done to earn the quiet that came after Victoria's. The last words were unlike anything I had ever heard, ever seen. Nathan heard everything at once, and Dad thought about themselves and our family, about the way things are supposed to be. Things falling apart all at once. Nathan was the first to respond by standing so. Suddenly his chair rolled back and smacked the wall. That's crazy, he remarked, his voice getting louder than I'd ever heard it before. When we were kids, I've been getting ready for this my whole life. Everyone knows I'm the heir, therefore you can't change that due of some manipulation at the last minute. Victoria responded firmly to Nathan. She didn't manipulate her granny. Watched the business for months before she made her choice about procedures. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. After careful thought, finally Dad spoke, but his voice was empty. When did Mum start? Do you have doubts about Nathan? Victoria looked at her notes. My records show that Eleanor first asked for a review of her estate planning in September, which is about a month after the Henderson Group crisis. She said she wanted to think about her original ideas on what would happen next. We're right. The Henderson Group. Crisis. That was when Nathan had told a client we could provide a whole market study in 2 weeks, which is how long a project usually takes. Weeks. When the client said they would cancel, Dad had commended Nathan for their contract, for being pushy and smart. What Dad didn't know was how to think beyond the box. Was that I had spent every night for 2 weeks working on a different analysis that met the client's deadline while keeping up with our quality standards. She never said anything, Dad stated in a low voice. She never said she was thinking it over. Ella Lehner asked for discretion. She wanted to see the family dynamics without affecting conduct. She thought that telling people her intentions to think about it again would put her genuineness at risk. Assessment. I thought about all the dinners we had as a family. In the last few months, all the times my grandma had asked me for specific inquiries about work. Dad and Nathan talked about what he wanted to do in the future. I thought she was just talking, but now I knew she had been doing job interviews. Nathan started to walk back and forth along the. He tightened his fists and walked around the room. There has to be a way to fight this. Too much influence, mental incapacity. Something. People don't just change their minds about inheritance after. For decades. They do when they learn something new. Victoria answered. Eleanor wrote down a lot of things. She kept records of some business choices, their results, and who was really is charge of both the failures and the wins. The pattern she was easy to see. What pattern? Dad asked, but the way he said it implied that he was starting to get it. Before, Victoria looked me straight in the eye, answering that Nathan got credit for. Juliet was always the one in charge of leadership, one who fixes issues and stops them from happening. Calamities and making sure the company real success. Ella Lehner came to the conclusion that good leadership was already going on. It just wasn't happening. Not recognized or rewarded. The truth of what they said hit the room like a force of nature. Every board member, everyone there had seen this happen. Changing. They had witnessed Nathan make bold announcements and watched me in silence take care of the implementation. They have been to meetings where people admired and noticed Nathan's vision. Me working late into the night to get those visions really do work. Victoria went on to say. Ella Lehner was really worried regarding Nathan's plans for making money in the future. Growth in the future. She had your CFO check out his suggestions on your own and said that they were, in her words, dangerously hopeful and not enough studied. I remembered those ideas. Nathan aimed to grow into 4 additional markets. At the same time, increase the number of workers by 2 in 18 months, and put money into technology systems that would cost more than what we make in a year. When I softly told them about my worries, he had told Dad that these were normal. Juliet is thinking too much. But Grandma had been listening. Victoria reached into her briefcase and took out another document. She said, "There's one more thing." Eleanor also gave clear instructions for the change of power. Nathan stopped walking around and looked at her. What kind of directions? She knew that this news would be a shock to the family. She wanted to make sure that the change would be smooth and professional with as little as interruption of business activities. Victoria opened the second file. Starting now, Juliet takes on the job of CEO of Brightburn Holdings. Nathan will keep his current job as Director of Business Development, reporting directly to Juliet. The room exploded. Nathan's face changed scarlet as he thought about the fact that he would now be working for the sister he had always thought of him as a subordinate. Dad seemed to be having a hard time breathing his carefully built. His worldview was falling apart right in front of him. Nathan yelled, "This is crazy. I won't work for her. I won't tell her that. Someone who's worked for me. I said softly, "Never your assistant." Talking for the first time since Victoria had started to read. "I was fixing the mistakes you made." The obvious truth behind that phrase made him quiet more efficiently than anything else. Could have yelled. Around the table, the board members were nodding a little, finally admitting what they had all. They knew it, but they never spoke it out loud. Victoria kept on reading. Eleanor has also set up a system for reviewing performance. Nathan's continuous work and any future profit sharing will depend on. Showed that his condition was getting better. The ability to make decisions and work with others, as assessed by Juliet and the board of directors. Skills for working with others? Nathan's voice Broken. She's not my employer, she's my sister. I actually stated, standing for the first time since this meeting started. I am. Both. And your first time working together. The hard part will be explaining to the Henderson Group why you promised. The delivery schedule almost cost us their contract. Dad finally spoke up. Juliet, you can't possibly mean to. Really? Make my brother responsible for his. I interrupted to say decisions. Yes, Dad, I really do. Starting with a thorough look at each and every project. He's been in charge for the last 2 years. Nathan's expression was full of sadness. Almost good enough. He was for the first time in his life getting in trouble for his. Instead of doing them quietly, someone else cleaned it up. Dad looked just as shocked, finally facing the truth that he thought are not only inaccurate about our skills, yet very dangerously wrong. The board will need time to think about this, remarked Margaret Chun, our longest-serving member of the board. But it's vital to remember that this change makes official what many people of us have seen for years. Other members of the board started to nod agreement. Juliet has been the backbone of operations of this business, James Park said, Chief Financial Officer. This choice acknowledges what is already, instead of making a new one. Nathan gazed around the room, badly looking for help that wasn't coming at all. Are you all just going to accept this? You're going to let her ruin all we've made? What we have built? I asked, and my voice stayed firm even though the adrenaline rushing through my system. Nathan, tell me about one project that went well. You've finished without me being involved. The quiet was awkwardly long as Nathan had a hard time answering. At last he looked at Dad with begging eyes. Are you going to allow her talk to me like this? Dad looked older than I had ever seen him. The burden of his mistake. Clearly too much. He said softly, I think your grandma knew something about this. Things about business that I missed. Victoria started to gather her papers. The change will work. Right away. Eleanor also asked that. I want to remind everyone that Brightburn Holdings has always done well due of thorough preparation and paying attention to not just vision and charm, but also detail. Grandmother Ella Laner had the last word. After all, even after death, she had observed, judged, and picked. Ability above favoritism. The daughter who was supposed to help, not lead, was now in command of everything. Before the Golden Boys' reign ended, it never really started, and everyone in the room knew it. In the months that followed, Nathan's disclosure about the inheritance, reputation fell apart both inside the company and in the whole business community. People rapidly learned about the era. Parent had been passed over in favor of his sister, who was meant to help him, leading clients and competitors to make him doubt every choice he had ever made. He kept trying to locate senior positions elsewhere, but jobs in other places were always stopped when reference checks showed the real situation of his loss of inheritance and the way it works. Expensive blunders that had made him his own grandmother to pick his sister. Instead, Richard had to deal with his own professional embarrassment as co-workers found out that his evaluation of his children's abilities had been so inherently flawed that even his own mother have to step in from the grave, leaving him to face decades of favoritism that almost ruined the family company for good. As I looked over our most recent quarterly reports, showing record income I thought about how leadership, grandmother Ella Laner's quietness, observation had confirmed years of unrecognized work and demonstrated that it is real. People who are leaders frequently come from are busy fixing problems instead of taking credit. The payback I got, unexpectedly acquired, was better than anything I could have thought of. The final proof that skill and dedication is more important than favoritism, and thought they had inheritance rights.